Hello, welcome to the third video in Module 11, focusing on project-based learning. I'm gonna give you some background information about challenges and solutions. Specifically, this section outlines some of the predominant challenges of project-based learning, why these vary widely between discipline and approach. The two most significant identified challenges across the disciplines are of students undertaking project-based lessons and difficulties experienced by academic staff. This section will first deal with some of the difficulties experienced by students and staff before suggesting some solutions. Let's have a look at the challenges for students undertaking project-based learning first. Group work was frequently identified as the most significant challenge faced by learners undertaking project-based lessons. Free riding by group members, unequal division of labor, and some students' poor attendance or dropping out were significant issues identified and found resentment between students when staff did not provide a framework for ensuring equal contribution from students. Furthermore, a lack of experience and understanding of the value of collaborative work, especially among high-achieving individuals, were important factors impeding successful collaboration. Cultural factors may also influence team dynamics. Difficulties with group work are attributed to lack of prior training and larger group size, which may complicate communication and division of work. A recent review of project-based lessons in teaching sustainability found that, despite discussions of team building and the organization of social events, further resources for supporting group work were needed. For students, a second significant challenge identified is that of adapting to an unfamiliar student-centered approach, in which significant responsibility for learning and work management shift from staff to learner, and where uncertainty is often central to the learning philosophy. The new burden of responsibility often starts right from the off, as many students may find it problematic to have choice over topics or projects. Students are often embarking on new academic subjects outside the framework of a very formal teaching structure. Students even find that their adjustment to the new types of learning and assessment as one of the most significant challenges. Student concerns regarding assessment focus mainly on one course, where lecturers assessing different groups each use their own criteria, engendering questions of transparency and equity. Other studies found that students often undervalue their progress, particularly in the social and process domains, through lack of communication by staff regarding the aims and objectives of project-based lessons. And it is suggested that a lack of clarity around assessment creates uncertainty for students, particularly for those accustomed to a correspondence between grades and correct answers. Now, we shall look into the challenges of project-based learning for academic staff. The main challenges of project-based learning for academic staff are similar to those faced by students and relate to problems adapting to new teaching methods and facilitation of group work. Most difficulties are centered on teachers' anxiety and resistance towards their new role as facilitator in student-centered project-based learning. Normally, lecturers struggle with the shift from being an imparter of knowledge to one of a mentor or facilitator and recommend the input of pedagogical trainers. It is also suggested that project-based learning is challenging for staff in terms of finding a balance between need for input and allowing students to the freedom and explore the experience. Similarly, teachers may be unsure about how much scaffolding to provide. Finally, one study reports on a lack of staff confidence regarding choice and implementation of appropriate methods of assessment, particularly formative assessment, which sometimes meant a focus on summative assessment and consequent heavy workloads for students and staff. Cultural factors and social context may also play a part in teachers' beliefs about their role, with attitudes varying across national borders. The time and resource-intensive nature of project-based learning was another significant challenge identified. Firstly, this related to the time taken to develop a project-based lesson model. Once introduced, project-based learning can demand significant time from teachers in terms of project guidance and ongoing formative and sometimes complex combinations of assessment. Identifying and developing appropriate problems and projects is also noted as time-intensive. In the school setting, teachers worry about the time management as projects activities overran classes and deadlines. Furthermore, Graham identified a need for significant numbers of trained facilitators and a lack of available resources such as materials, equipment, and teaching or project space. The first identified challenge is group work, and there are 6 potential solutions. Allocating fixed or rotating group roles to individuals, possibly based on members' behavioral strength or skill sets. The provision of formal training in group work for students prior to or during the project. Providing time and support for the groups to feel comfortable together. Staff chosen on the basis of their experience and skills in group work. Provision of staff training in group work and facilitation, and clear guidelines and rules on the expectations regarding individual contribution to group work and how this will be assessed. The second identified challenge is planning and preparation, and there are 4 potential solutions. Piloting the project, using a real-world problem as a driving question for the project, choosing projects which can be scaled up or down depending on student numbers, and advanced identification of the negotiation with external partners. The third identified challenge is scaffolding and student support, and there are 5 potential solutions. Providing a thorough briefing for students about the aims, methods, and content of the project. Use of past student experience to help brief new students. Use of sample projects or written project guides. Appropriate levels of scaffolding, often providing greater lectural input in the early stages and reducing as the project continues, and appropriate materials and resources provided. The fourth identified challenge is maintaining motivation, and there are three potential solutions. Choice of projects which interest students and have real-world significance. Use of competitions between teams and prizes. And showcasing of performances to external or professional audiences. The fifth identified challenge is assessment, and there are five potential solutions. Assessment should be appropriate to the task and the learning outcomes targeted. Inclusion of several types of assessment: summative and formative, peer and staff, group and individual. Formative assessment through cycles of feedback and revision. Training for staff in alternative forms of assessment, and the inclusion of time and space for students to reflect on their learning throughout the project. The sixth identified challenge is staffing, and there are six potential solutions. The choice of staff who understand and have experience in project-based learning or transdisciplinary work. Training for staff in project-based learning approaches. The use of trained postdoctoral or PhD tutors for group work. Time for staff to trial, evaluate, and reflect on project-based learning, support by pedagogical experts. Access to materials and resources for lecturers regarding project-based learning. And institutional or management recognition of the extra staff time and resources needed for project-based learning. The review above suggests increasing interest in the use of project-based learning in a variety of educational institutions worldwide, while the ways in which the approach is selected is very diverse, and the implementation highly context-specific. The examples outlined in the literature provided a valuable resource for educators regarding some of the main advantages, challenges, project-based learning. Key challenges include the potential for conflict and free riding within group work, and the need for training for staff and students to address these potential difficulties. Also, prominent among potential problems is resistance to the approach from staff and students who may be used to more traditional teaching structures and styles. Again, adequate training for staff as well as clear explanation to students of the rationale and process of the approach are needed. These, together with the inclusion of adaptive methods and assessment and student support, are likely to require extra resources, particularly in terms of staff time. While, as mentioned above, further research into the academic benefits and skills development associated with project-based learning is needed. The examples given in the literature suggest the approach offers an engaging, student-centered form of teaching and learning, with potential for addressing student recruitment and employability agendas, while retaining a commitment to democratization and making a genuine contribution to addressing wider pressing social and environmental issues.